Everybody, welcome to the Five Tools Show. We have a great show for you today. We have Paul from the WrestlingCardPriceGuide.com. Let's do it. So, Paul, thanks for being with us.
Sure.
I saw one of your videos with Tony on Tony's podcast.
Wrestling Trading Cards was the first and the original website that Tony and Dave Porter started back in the early 2000s. And we did, I did the price guide, which was an actual book. And that didn't come around. This is the actual book here. You can see it. It was the first printed price guide for wrestling. It was the first wrestling cards. It was the first book of any sort about wrestling cards. And it only took us up to 2010. It got us up to the point that we were in the middle of the TriStar era. And what had happened was that when book sales were over, it was like too much to do another book. So we created the website. My wife was a WordPress designer, and we just took everything that was a book, and then we started adding the sets as we went along. And there was a while where we were rolling along with WrestlingTradingCards.com, but then he went offline for about four or 5 years in around 2016. And then Chuck and I sort of kept everything going. But the important thing to understand is that my website came from WrestlingTradingCards.com. When I was putting together, I'm a master collector as well. So when I was putting together my master checklists, a lot of that information was being taken from there. And a lot during the Fleer eras, and a lot of time when they were doing that work, I would often get in touch with them, said, hey guys, I don't think this card exists. Like there was a lot of feedback between the two. And in fact, the back of this book here I mentioned is an advertisement for a TriStar set that was coming out at the time. And Tony actually brokered that deal for me. So even though we didn't know each other personally, we were aware of each other, and we'd had conversations with each other. But for me, it's like when Tony came back, because Chuck was working with me during that time and then started working with Tony, we all decided that it makes sense to work together. We also work with another guy named Anthony, who has a site called Husker Halves, and they sell individual wrestling cards.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know that he's on he's another site that I check out a lot, and that there's your site, which is awesome. Yeah.
No, there are a few others, not to suggest we're the only ones. Nick Kaufman is a great site called Crazy Card Collector. And then of course there's stuff outside of the wrestling world, like the trading card database and card ladder and things like that. And obviously the big card companies like Beckett and David Adams, the Cardboard Connection, they have sites that give a lot of wrestling information. But the four of us, myself, Tony, and Chuck, or the three of us, I guess, we spend a lot of time sharing information. I found this set, doing a lot of archiving, a lot of research. I've spent a lot of time doing work in the foreign market in India. Chuck has been working very hard on the indie side of things. Anthony's just redoing his site. Tony's still working on getting his images up. And so since these guys are sort of coming together, it didn't make sense for there to be this sort of territorial thing about it. And I think it's worked out very well. Like, I don't think Tony and I would have a monthly show, or we'd be doing the things we intend to do. He's putting on a big show, I don't know if you're aware, in Tampa called Top Rope Wrestling Con. And I'm going to fly down there with my buddy. We're going to have a wrestling card booth, the first time that wrestling card trading cards and wrestling card price guides have been represented in the real world outside of online. So there's a lot of stuff that we do together, and the relationship has been symbiotic. So I think, it's a long answer to your short question, but that's why we work together rather than against each other.
It's such a tight-knit community, the wrestling world. And me and Joe are huge fans since kids, but we're mainly baseball, but we always branch off into wrestling. And, just to hear these stories, when you talk to, baseball card collectors, football, basketball, hockey, etc., there's nothing like the wrestling industry, how tight knit you guys are. And, like Joe said, it's really awesome because there's no, you guys ain't going back and forth and getting into stuff. It's really cool. So what was your introduction to? Huh?
So we try not to, Joe. And the thing is that, there's a handful of us that have been around throughout, and we've become known to each other. And like I said, we don't know each other personally, but we're friendly with each other online, and we go to bat for each other. And I think as more people come into the hobby, like you say, they find it strange, because in the bigger hobbies of football, baseball, basketball, you get these sort of infighting things and shit that happens amongst people. But, we're a good group.
What was your introduction to wrestling? Was it as a kid? Did it come along later?
I had an East Indian father, and he wasn't a sort of throw the ball, take me out to play kind of father. Different culture. But the one thing that he did was him and his buddies used to go to the Maple Leaf Gardens. I'm in Toronto, Canada, back in the days of the original Chic, and they used to go to wrestling. And here I was, a 9-year-old kid wanting to do stuff with my dad, kicking and screaming, "Can I go?" And his buddy said, bring the kid along. And that was my introduction to it. So at a very young age, I took it, and I'm in my early 50s now, and it's never gone away. It's stuck. It's been a passion. I've enjoyed wrestling throughout. It's just, I play music and I'm into my wrestling, and I started collecting cards. I actually bought the OPG 85s, which is the equivalent of the tops, in packs. And then from there, I was pretty much buying stuff along the way as it came out,
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
I should say, guys, it's very cool what you guys are doing, because we have a lot of shows about wrestling, but it's cool when guys from other parts of the hobby, like baseball, all of a sudden jump into our world. And we've had a few guys like that are more knowledgeable about the hobby in general, and what you guys bring and then giving us the exposure is great as well. So we do appreciate it.
I think it's our second love. I think me and Joe could both agree on that.
Yeah, like when you guys started doing your wrestling series, it's like, okay, they know what they're doing because they got all the right guys on, right?
Yeah.
And it's been interesting, those segments, because what it does is, again, it gives a wider spread. And that's what Tony and myself and Anthony and Chuck and our vintage guys, Dave and Rob, that's what we're trying to do, is just bring more eyeballs to the hobby. And that's kind of happening through the AEW release, with the Panini coming soon with the new WWE product. Obviously the pandemic brought prices way up, then it leveled up, but you know what? Prices are starting to go up again. There's some crazy stuff going on with parallels, with shiny stuff. Roman Reigns, like I posted something this morning where 4 Roman cards have gone over $1,000. A $15,000 sale last week. It's the biggest one ever of a Roman, for a modern wrestling card. That's pretty good. We wouldn't have had this conversation a year ago.
Yeah, it's funny because when I was just watching Tony's videos, and I went deep back, this is a while ago, and I forgot which one it was, but you were on there, and I didn't even, now that I see you, I was like, I remember. Yeah. And I think I even left a comment. I was like, you guys sound like baseball guys, because you were talking about something with tops and how I just forget what it was, but definitely like the modern aspect of the wrestling cards, which I personally am not a huge fan of. I'm not a huge fan of it in baseball either, because I think it becomes over the top. What I do like about wrestling cards, like just base sets, maybe a couple of inserts, not even parallels, some autos, like that's to me really, really cool.
I'm not a parallels guy either. I mean, I'm a guy that we used to use, well, it's a word that's used often, as completist, the guy that's trying to go out there and buy every master set. And up until 2003, 2004, the Fleer era, that might have been possible to get close. But then once the Heritage Chrome started coming out with different levels of parallels and stuff, it was game over for forever collecting everything. So I like the term sort of master collector, because I'm like you guys, I collect vintage. I have the All-Stars, I have the WCW autographs, but I've just sort of went along for the ride, and it's not like I sort of dove in a couple of years ago and said, oh, I want to get my hands on all this wrestling stuff. So it's been manageable. And that's how the price guide has sort of worked out. As the sets come out, I sort of get them personally. I catalog them for the site, and then out they go. And then we have a record. And that's something Chuck and I are very keen on, providing a very accurate historical record for the hobby. Because when we're gone, we want to make sure that all this early shit has been categorized and archived correctly.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's funny because I've been buying a lot of the 82, the BBM cards, and with the board, with the colored borders. And sometimes, you go on Tony's side, it's just, you don't know where to look if you're a wrestling collector without having you guys. It's people have to realize that, like, you don't know what checklist is what, because even PSA does. I've had conversations with PSA about certain things from that set. Because a lot of those, especially the Hogans, have a round border, and
that's right.
Some of them you see are just cut. And I reached out to PSA to ask if they would accept either way, and they said they would now, whereas before they only accepted the round borders. So
and we know for a fact that PSA uses both of our sites to authenticate stuff to see.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah, they start on Tony's site, see if it's listed. They look on mine, and then they see, okay, this is something that's obviously in the marketplace. It's being presented, so it's something that we can consider.
Yeah.
And we do this all for free. It's a labor of love, obviously. I'm a wrestling fan. I'm a collector. I have a little bit of AdSense on my site that gives a few bucks a month, nothing over the top. And that's it. Like I've gone deep in the hole over the years buying stuff, because I got a lot of rarer stuff that I picked up along the way. But you do it as labor of love. For me, collecting, like I know you guys are into grading and that kind of thing. And I've never graded anything. I'm on the Chuckster side of things. Whereas for me, collecting has been sort of to preserve a record of wrestling, so that when I go back, I go, oh, I remember this era in wrestling, or I remember this guy, or what was going on at the time. And it's kind of like music, you listen to records and you remember your life back then. It's the same thing for me. And for me, it was always, once I have one Hogan All-Star, I don't need a second one. I trade investment real estate for a living. So with cards, it was never for me. I didn't want to get in, oh, is this a 7 or this is 8? I want it to be more so, can I get as much of it as is affordable and as practical? Now up here in Toronto, it's difficult with shipping sometimes, so it gets tricky. But I remember the days, guys, where I used to have to go stand in line at the post office to get a money order to send down to the States to get a card to come up. So I've been doing it throughout, but it's been a fun journey. And in these last couple of years, obviously with the numbers going up through the pandemic, I have my wall upstairs and it's worth something now, like quite a bit, in fact. So it's been fun.
Me and Joe, we were texting earlier about what you just said in terms of, I mean, I like to grade cards, but on the other side of it, I'm an old soul collector where, like, some of the old cards, I want to feel the card.
Yeah.
I want to hold that card that's been in circulation for the last 80 years, right? There's nothing like that side of it too. And then I guess we're kind of, I know for me, I love the graded side where, your cards are safe. It's not always about the score, it's the look. I just bought a Phil Rizzuto rookie the other day and it's a 1, but the card looks so beautiful. I don't know how it's a 1, and I just wanted to buy that card. So if it said 1 or a 5,
exactly.
I wanted that card.
And again, if you're doing it for the love of collecting, now some guys are obviously in business, and it obviously makes sense to go to PSA and to try and get as big a grade as possible. And if that's your lane of the hobby, God bless. But it's not for everybody. And for me, it's like when the time came and I saw that it started becoming a thing, I was trying to consider, it's like, well, if I start, where do I stop? And I don't want that to be my focus of the hobby. I'd rather try and find stuff in Japan, find stuff in Mexico, find stuff in Europe. For example, there's a very, very rare Panini set that came out in 1995. We believe that only test runs of it came out. And we've only seen one complete set ever of this stuff. It's a beautiful set, and I managed to get it. Anthony has almost a second set, and you see singles floating around, but these cards are fucking beautiful. And, they're just hard to get. So for me, the enjoyment has been that kind of thing, going after the rarer stuff, the WCW autographs. I have 107 of the official 101. Those kinds of chases have been fun for me. The only set I don't have that I'd really like to get is the 1979 Rex roast beef set. That's the one set that's eluded me all these years.
That? Is Peck the one that has that one?
Yeah. And one day when I break into his house and they disappear. But no, we joke about that. That's something that I've always had my eye on, and it's just impossible to get. Now there is vintage stuff. There's Japanese stuff, early stuff, Menko sets. And I've just done a lot of work about the trump cards in India. A lot of it sort of illegitimate, and there's tons of shit there too that we're finding all the time. So it's just interesting sort of keeping up. Like today, Tony sent me some stuff of some indie stuff. I think it went on in Pennsylvania that I had no clue about. And then I'm working on a set with Anthony that I'm going to send to Chuck tomorrow. So we're constantly talking about new cards for the hobby. And then as soon as we get it, we're not proprietary. The first thing we do is we share it with each other and then we get it out there. We tweet it out there and then we try and get it right. And ultimately, WrestlingTradingCards.com will have everything. And I'm proud to say I'm a part of that site. So it's not just I run my site, but I'm a part of Tony's staff and I'm in his flow to get stuff out. I help Anthony and they help me sometimes. You have a scan of this or scan of that or whatever. So it works out quite nicely amongst all of us.
It's amazing how much of the wrestling card, it's so unknown still. There's so much mystery in it. And that's what makes, it's so exciting, is that you don't know what you're going to come across that maybe somebody has never seen before.
Yeah, still to this day, like I've got something like 700 and something posts on the site now, and it was like 200 and something 2 years ago. Like, so that's how much, like the pandemic and this sort of growth of the hobby and this sort of community that we've created has fueled us to go even further. Like everyone's redoing their sites and we're anticipating that the hobby is going to grow. Critical mass might not be the right term, but it's going to get to a point where, people are going to take us a lot more seriously than they may have in the past. And we know that, as we've always sort of occupied that gray area in between sport and non-sport. A lot of times we're considered non-sport, but for sure, just with the numbers I'm seeing, like X Fractors from 2006 Chrome going for $300 a piece, stuff I'm seeing on a daily basis is like, wow, like the numbers. And Tony and I do this every month. We look at pricing and we have an index that we follow. But yeah, the numbers are up for sure. And even if you're not in the business of wrestling cards for investment, if you bought a card 2 years ago and you didn't rip it up, it's worth more. So that's investing. You know what I mean? It's been a good hobby to be in for sure. Most things have to be, you know.
I mean, for us, it's always more interesting to talk to collectors than investors, because to me, I can think of so many more things that are much better to invest in than pieces of cardboard, you know. So, but I think it's awesome, like the master set thing, and that shot, like that side of the hobby, and any part of, you know, whatever kind of trading cards it is.
Sure.
That's like an
It takes a lot of
archivist.
time and dedication.
Yeah. It's like an archivist kind of thing. You know, graded
Right.
cards for me, the irony is that the cards I grade are cards I just want to have sealed and protected. And if it's in a high grade and I pulled it, that's awesome. I love that. But it's not like I'm thinking ever about, oh, I'm going to grade these cards and sell them. I know that sounds foreign to most people involved in the hobby nowadays.
Yes.
But it's just so important to have people that are really just doing the homework, archiving, preserving. You know,
Yeah.
if you have more graded cards, if you're graded to raw is like less than, it has to be like 90 raw, 10% graded at the most, I think, because I can't, if you have more graded cards than raw cards, I'm just like, what are you doing? Are you really collecting cards?
I have over 40,000 pieces. I've never graded a card, and I've never sold a card that I didn't have two of. I've kept everything. You know, and that's been the journey for me. And that's been after it started off innocently enough with just a few sets, isn't this cute? But then all of a sudden time passes, years turns into decades, and all of a sudden you've got all this stuff. And then all of a sudden you realize that some of this stuff has value. And then the pandemic really sort of shone a light on how much of the stuff that I've accumulated over the years that people want. Because it's hard to get, it's in short supply now. Back when I was collecting, it was easy. You know, it wasn't the market then as it is now, Joe. It was easy for me to go out and buy these WCW autographs and not spend hundreds of dollars. I mean, in fact, I was looking today at the X-Fractor set, and I'm a bit of a cheapo guy. So I know for a fact I wouldn't have spent in 2006 more than $100 for that set. And now Cena's going for 300, Taker's going for 2, Michaels are going for 2. So, you know, some of this were thousands all of a sudden. And I could repeat this on many other different sets that I've collected, because I collected a lot of the early Fleer on-card autograph stuff, a lot of the TriStar stuff. And God bless, it's done well, very well.
The you speaking of those, the Heritage Chrome, the 2006 and 7, I bought about maybe 6 months ago. I bought both the sets. You know, just I felt like it's going to be one of those sets that later on it's going to take off.
Yeah, there's real push on Chrome for sure.
Yeah, so you know, I just put that away, and I bought an X-Fractor, Triple H X-Fractor, and you know, you look in PSA and there's not even any in the pop.
Exactly.
Like you would think like Triple H, like X-Fractor, you know. So I think it's like where people are just starting to come around to those cards. Where
that's all. I was just going to say, you're exactly right. That's all coming. As more people come into the hobby, younger guys are coming in. They're getting their hands on this stuff. Like Chuck and I were talking. Sorry, Anthony and I were talking today that on his old version of the site, he used to have these refractors at like $5, $10 a card, right? And now, and he said he sold them all. And he said he wished he didn't, because now, you know, the lowest cards are 20, 25. And like I say, some of the big names, and there's quite a few, are like hundreds. And, you know, who knew?
But it is a great set, though. I mean, you have The Rock, you have Cena, you have so many, you know, those cards are really, you know, really cool. Hogan. I mean, you have the old, the new, you know, it's really, they did a great job with those Chrome.
That's going to be something we're talking about now with Panini taking over the Topps license. How many of these old legends, because the hobby is fueled obviously by the GOATs, the big names, and as I said earlier, the rare stuff, the Superfractor, the 1-of-1s, the red stuff, the shiny stuff. There's a real push on that now, and like you say, I think it's early days, and people are going to get hold of these. Not only the greatest names, you know, the 4 or 5, but also the Triple H, Savages, the Steamboats, you know, the next tier of top guys that are always Stings, they're always going to be in demand, and you're going to see those hit the graders, and not just PSA, all of them, you know. So I think that all this stuff is going to lead towards the hobby getting bigger and bigger, and we do this for the benefit of not only of our collections, but just so that, you know, we kind of leave the hobby better than when we found it, kind of thing, you know.
That's awesome. Yeah, I definitely see more and more people reacting to wrestling cards. Like I have an Instagram account with, you know, a pretty good following, and I'm seeing more and more people just post wrestling cards randomly. Facebook, I put up an Undertaker card. You know, I 99% of the cards I post are baseball. I posted Undertaker, 91 WWF Classic card and the PSA 9. And people were just like, I just got a great reaction from it. And me and Joe talked about this before, kids in Japan, they may not know who Ronald Acuna is. And well, maybe not Japan, but take another country, Nepal or anywhere.
Yeah.
But everybody knows The Undertaker. Everybody knows Mean Gene. I mean, you go back generations. Everybody knew San Martino. Like, I know San Martino. I wasn't old enough to see him wrestle. I know Bobo Brazil. I know those names. It's an international appeal that wrestling cards have that I don't think any sport can really. Maybe boxing, but boxing box cards are a thing, but not like wrestling. Wrestling has this international appeal that I think really favors it more than almost any other type of trading card.
Right. The only thing is, Joe, is that we haven't lived up to that appeal. In other words, we're not UFC, we're not NASCAR, we're not Star Wars, we're not Walking Dead. There's a lot of other properties out there that eclipse wrestling. And we wrestling guys are like, wait a minute, why? And that's changing very quickly. So we're on our way now to being a segment of the hobby that is being recognized. Like you say, when someone says, oh, you got wrestling? Like, for example, there's a show that we do up here called Sport Expo. And I usually go around and I'm the guy that goes around table to table saying, you got any wrestling? It's kind of a joke because they know me and they're like, no, Paul, we don't have anything here. But I suspect at the next one, I'm going to find wrestling, and what else is fueling it is indie stuff. Indie sets are coming out and they're real hot. And, like a set will come out for 30, 40 bucks a year later, not even a year, 6 months later, it's $100, so there's this inflation in all segments of the cards that are coming out that's fueling this. And I think we're catching it at a good time. And what you guys are doing, what we're doing, sort of putting the information out there so it becomes easier for collectors to get into it and understand what they got, how much they should be paying for it, and all that kind of thing.
Do you have an all-time favorite set?
Yeah, I've been asked this before. I like, Joe, the 90, 98, 99 WCW autograph series that came over those 3 sets. I mean, I collected those over a long period of time. Some guys in the hobby have done it as well, very, very quickly and very recently. I like the All-Stars like everybody else, because they're so iconic. And there's certain sets. I got to say the last Heritage set that just came out before Christmas, I thought was fantastic for a late Topps release. 2010 Topps Platinum I quite like. Obviously my rare Paninis, there's quite a few, but again, you're talking to a guy that has almost all of it, so it's difficult to pick. Sure. It being a master or being sort of a macro collector, it's difficult because you're trying to get not only the base sets, but as much of the insert sets. And back in the Fleer days, I was chasing down relics and auto sets as well. So I have some like 1,500 different autographs, and that's just from buying a card every second or third week, but over a course of 20 years, rather than what's been going on now. A lot of guys trying to go back and they're paying an arm and a leg for stuff that was just sitting for the longest time. So I was very lucky that just by virtue of age, I guess, I was able to sort of get into it and grab a lot of this stuff fresh on the day.
It's cool. There's a page called Those Back Pages. It's mostly baseball stuff. Yeah. Awesome collector. And he said this one thing one time that I always stuck with me. He showed like a parallel of a rookie card. And he said, this ain't the rookie. The base card's the rookie. So right. So the reason I'm telling you this, I noticed on your site, you say that you don't rate, or rather you don't assign a price or evaluation to like not inserts, but like parallels and autos. Why is that? And
because it's not, because I like
that you consider it like, all right, you base collector, like you get the set, you don't have to chase everything, because that is insane. You can't collect everything.
Yeah. But, so I'll have a value for the base set, usually an aggregate number for all the pieces, the 100 pieces, and then I will separate your high-end stuff. To your point about parallels, 4 or 5 years ago, we started to do it, and we started to try and figure out, okay, for the first level parallel out of 100, times it by 1.5 or by 2 or whatever. But then we found that it wasn't uniform from set to set. So in other words, what an orange was from one release to the next release to the next release didn't correlate at all. You go from Undisputed to Heritage to Then and Now, and you look at their parallels. And in some cases, you could buy a complete first level parallel set, honestly, for 40 bucks. And then in other sets, you'd never be able to buy one because you just couldn't put it together. So it just became such a pain in the ass to sort of stay on top of it. You got to remember, guys, and we say this often, is that my site is a guide because, we all live lives, and it's impossible for me to go back over every set and edit the numbers. When someone brings a glaring problem, then we try and fix it. But the reality is that before the pandemic, we had a certain level of pricing. Now, if I would have went and adjusted everything after the pandemic, I would have had to go back again, fix all that, and now things are starting to climb. So what we try and do is we try and give a rough range for someone. Obviously you're going to go 130 sold, look at your eBays, but if you're just looking at a quick eye check, what's this worth? That's what it's for. But when we started looking at parallels, it was just too much. And it was the same thing with the base card checklist. It was just something that, that's Tony's world. And I'd rather spend time helping get that information to him than trying to worry about it for my site. And that way it's very manageable for me to sort of do both.
Do you feel the 85 OPG set is undervalued? Because I see a lot of, I don't see the same numbers with the tops, and it's more rare. So it doesn't add up for me. Can you help me out on that?
They released OPG up here in Canada, and then there was a version of the following year in New Zealand called Scanlens, and those ones were very condition sensitive. Obviously, the number of OPGs were fewer printed than the tops down in the States, and I bought mine. I would always buy my stuff on the secondary market, but those ones though in 85, because I would have been like 17 or 18, whatever I was. I remember because it was around the time of the first WrestleMania, and I physically remember buying those packs. And it's the only memory I have of actually ripping and opening. So when you look at my OPG set, they're curled a little bit, they're weathered because I actually played and handled those with those cards, right? They've done well, obviously. Like Tony and I talk about the value of the Hogan, the number one card, ungraded is around $50. The OPGs would probably, I'm not going to say double, Joe, but they probably be one and a half times that, and the Scanlens would probably be double, maybe even triple, to be honest with you, because I've never seen a mint set of the Scanlens. I've seen close, but not perfect.
Actually I bought one the other day, and obviously it's not a card that's worth tons, but I mean, he was just it's a signed George the Animal.
That's great.
That's
but
awesome.
it's just, that like,
you show me that, man. I didn't see that. That's awesome.
It came in the mail yesterday.
Man.
But you see how you groove on that and you really enjoy that card.
What a great
people do that we have player collectors that collect. Some guys just do Daniel Bryan. Some guys just do Hulk Hogan. Some guys, one guy is very heavy into Becky Lynch. Tony and Zan do like Dexter Loomis and Killer Cross, which I'm still trying to figure out. But they choose the people they like because they enjoy them, and that's their fun. That gives them gas. So when you see that George the Animal right away, I get a smile on your face. I see it's like, I remember those days.
Yeah, and plus it's OPG. So I never, as a kid, I never was able to get any of those. It was so hard to, So to have a George the Animal sign, it brings back childhood of green tongues and bitten turnbuckles. I mean, it just brings you right back.
I'd have to check. I think Leaf might have done some George autographs later, but yeah, certainly in the earlier versions that came out. And maybe again, George Steele could turn up in any one of a number of top sets in between 2000 and 2020.
Yeah, you don't see that.
But that's going to be one of his first cards. So it's a nice one.
Yeah, no, I was happy. I mean, and the value on this for me, what you pay for this, you always feel like it should be way more because of how many cards did he sign or on an 85 OPG, right? I mean, like
it's an intrinsic value in the pleasure and the joy that it gives you. For example, I paid over $1,000 for a Mike Enos WCW autograph because this was one of the last ones that we didn't know about that was unreleased, and I think that's a lot of money for a Mike Enos card, but I had to have it because I've got all the rest of them. You know what I mean? It has value to me. Someone else would pay me $15 for it. But
that's all. You're a collector, right? That's all that matters. It was worth it to you.
We've all been sitting around during COVID. We can't travel as much as we used to. We can't go out for dinners as much as we used to. So a lot of people that have cash, this is where it went. And that happened in a big way with a lot of big time collectors sort of in the height of the pandemic, and a lot of them moved on now, but there's still a lot of people from that time that are keeping an eye and watching what's happening in the marketplace. And I'm seeing it, like specifically with those Roman Reigns, like, a 15 grand Roman Reigns is something to be excited about because there's going to be more. There's going to be more of those kinds of stuff for sure. There's a dude that bought the Superfractor Vince McMahon from the Transcendence set from last year, and he got it for like just under 10 grand. Now you might think to yourself, That's a lot of money for a wrestling card, but it's not when a Roman Reigns all of a sudden from a set, years earlier is getting more than that. So you're going to see all sorts of new things, and eventually we're going to start seeing the ultimate sale now is a signed 82 Hulk, and I don't recall what it is. It's around 40 grand or something like that. But we're going to see those records being shattered in the next year or two. We're going to have all sorts of things, especially if more of this stuff, like you did with the George Steele, if people start signing these Rocks, these Hogans, and these big names, Austins, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, wrestling autographs are just really special because, as a fan of wrestling, wrestlers are more accessible. It's kind of like punk rock. It's like there's no big gate between you and, there could be, but you could go to a local wrestling show and get an autograph from a guy that's going to be huge in a few years, or a guy that was huge a few years ago. I have a Mean Gene Okerlund auto, PSA graded, PSA DNA. It's one of my favorite cards. It's Mean Gene. It's like I paid $100 for that card. How is that $100? He passed away. I bought it after he passed away. How is that card $100? It's Mean Gene. It's so, to me, it's crazy. I feel like there's so many hidden gems in the wrestling, especially with the autos. You see some of the autos from wrestlers that are kind of cheap, and I'm like, why is this so cheap? Guys who are no longer with us.
But they're starting to dry up, man. Like this was a thing people were saying, scoop this stuff up, and people have been listening, because now if you look, you don't find as many inexpensive autographs as you might have 6 months ago. So the word's getting out there, and they say that all tide lifts all boats, and that's what's going to happen here, is that there's going to be new price ceilings across the board on this stuff. And it's good and bad. Like some people say it's bad because, kids can't get into it and becomes an adult hobby where you're spending a lot of money. Because here we are sort of talking about, I just spent 100 on a Mean Gene, or 100 on a George Steele, or 1,000 on a Mike Enos, and people are scratching their heads going, what are you guys doing? But the value of the hobby is so much greater than these small examples. There's so many more people coming into it. And there's a lot of people, like I said, like you guys, that were in baseball, in football, in basketball, that were wrestling fans and just didn't realize the sort of equity that was there in the wrestling cards. And that's what's sort of been lifted over these last few months, and what Tony and myself and Zan and some of these other guys that do regular content is just trying to get the word out there that, hey, buy wrestling cards, because if you like wrestling, get the cards.
Do you ever, do you have any idea of the print runs of particular sets? Like a modern set, like for example, the AEW set that just came out on Upper Deck.
When we had a chat with Billy from Upper Deck, and he says that's something that's proprietary. They don't share print runs, AEW. We do find out on the indie sets because we have direct conversations with the guys that are putting them out, and usually we can get a sense of what it is. And Tony at the bottom of every listing will always mention where we know what it was, but Topps never made that information available either, except obviously for their living sets and their on demands and things like that. But it's a yes and no answer. In some cases, yes, but most of the time with the bigger manufacturers, no. And I think that's going to be the case again with Panini. We're not going to find out what the actual prints are. Like even those WCW autographs I was talking about, we don't ultimately know how many of those autographs there were. It just wasn't information that was available to us at the time.
Yeah.
But we know that there's a lot less gettable stuff out there than there was, which means that collectors are hanging on to it, and whatever else that's out there that has some sort of value is getting scooped up. So that's encouraging for the hobby, and that's going to get more people to churn their stuff over, and the dollars will agree, the price ceiling will increase, which again isn't the greatest for young people in the hobby, but it's the sign of a maturing market of business that's going well when all of a sudden your stock is up.
Do you still watch wrestling?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So you're with the current, you kind of know what's going on with the current wrestling as well.
Yeah, I work from home, so I often have podcasts on the go. I have a TV up in my office, so I never watch it live. But during the day when I'm doing stuff, like we watched my buddy come over last night. We taped the Elimination Chamber and watched it at night because it was an event. And my friends tend to be wrestling guys because there's been a group of us that have been together for all these years watching all these pay-per-views. So yeah, I've been a wrestling fan throughout. Like my love of collecting is rooted in the fact that I'm at my core a wrestling fan.
Yeah. Any favorite guys that you enjoy now? Like, is there any few that you root for that you want to watch more than others?
No, I mean, like it's during the WCW time, during the Monday Night Wars, because up here in Toronto we didn't get the Turner Network. I watched mostly Vince, but now that I can watch the AEW product, I am enjoying it. It's fresh. It's different. You know, I'm really liking this Danhausen character, how he's sort of permeating everything. You know, without even throwing a forearm. But yeah, like I don't. It's wrestling. You know what I mean? So when Brock all of a sudden wins again last night, I said, wait a minute, he won 3 weeks ago, then he won Royal Rumble, then he won yesterday. I don't trouble myself with what's going on. I just enjoy it. It's like music to me. It's just background stuff, you know. But I've been watching it and going to it. Like I go to indie events up here. It's right around the corner from my house. I'm working with the local guys. It's called Greektown Wrestling on their first trading card release, which is going to be fun. Like I say, I'm going down to Tony's Top Rope show in September. And hopefully there's going to be more things along those lines. Again, all this work being done just to sort of raise awareness for the hobby and let people know that, you know, wrestling cards are cool and it's something you might want to collect if you're a wrestling fan. And we know that there's a lot of people that buy figures, a lot of people buy t-shirts. They just don't buy as many wrestling cards. And that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to push that number up.
And Canada has such a great history of wrestling and wrestlers. So that, right? Like so many legends.
Toronto, Toronto and Montreal are big wrestling markets. They always have been.
Yeah. So with the newer wrestling cards, do you ever see wrestling card? I mean, I know everybody wants wrestling to be more appreciated as far, but if you ever saw wrestling cards, you know, get printed like baseball cards, that would be disturbing to you or no? I mean, like the hottest rookie right now, they're going to make 800,000 of his cards in Top Series 1.
Well, you know, Joe, it seems
or maybe I'm going to ask you, like, do you ever anticipate that happening? That's really my question.
Well, not at the same level of basketball or baseball, but it kind of did happen back in 2016, 2017. Tom's was cranking out stuff like you wouldn't believe. And like in 2018, 2019, we were getting, like I said, every 4 to 6 weeks, you know, which is too many, you know, major releases. And you know, it seems to me based on what the vibe I'm getting.
Between 2000, I'm sorry, between, you said 2000.
Say 2015, 16 is when
that's really when Top started going insane. Yeah,
you had a Road to WrestleMania, then you had a women's division, then you had, you know, the flagship, and then and Now, and Heritage, Undisputed, SummerSlam, Money in the Bank, and on and on and on and on and on. Then you had Tops on Demand, and then they had special just tops, just bang, bang, bang. Too much, you know. Now, from what I understand, Joe, of what Upper Deck and Panini are planning, they're going to have fewer releases per year, but they're going to have like their Spectrum release and the Prism release, which is higher end product. And again, because I'm a wrestling guy, I've never bought this stuff before. I've never bought the equivalent in UFC or football or baseball or soccer. But I don't think we're going to have the quantity that you're referring to. But, you know, from what I understand, the quality is expected of the cards expected to be higher. Thereby more expensive. And if this first AEW release was any indication, it's going to be more difficult for hardcore collectors like me to get everything, just because of the way the seating is going and how much of this stuff is going to remain in boxes. Like a lot of people are going to sit on boxes, and some of these boxes, like the new Spectrum product as we speak, is at $300 a box. Now think about it, $300 a box. You know, how are you going to make your money on $300 a box unless you get something really good? And in most cases you're not, you know what I mean? So for me, it's like,
and the Spectrum is the Panini.
That's the Upper Deck next release.
So it's the next release for AEW.
Yeah, that was announced earlier this week or 2 weeks back, and they showed some pictures. And I think it's June is when it's coming out. And Spectrum is one of the Upper Deck brands that they've used in their other sports before.
Right. Yeah.
The price point is expected to be higher. But you know what? I've spoken about this before. Like, I don't know if you guys know, but when Undisputed debuted in 2015 or 16, there was quite a bump in prices. And a lot of us were like, whoa, what's this $100 wrestling set? But, you know, 2 years later, Transcendent came out, and that blew the roof off. The Transcendent product was like 15 grand a case, you know, with the Vince autos and that kind of thing. So, you know, the mindset's been slowly changed in modern cards to not be freaked out by big numbers, especially with sort of Upper Deck and Panini coming our way.
Yeah, that's cool. It's not, you know, I mean, I don't want to ever see wrestling cards just get mass printed like that. I don't know if it would ever be possible. It never has in the past, but you know, you never know. You never know.
And that's the thing. A lot of us give opinions on where we think things are going to go, and just remember that that's all they are. You know, none of us works for Tops or Panini or Upper Deck, so we don't exactly know what's going on. All we can do is sort of forecast to the hobby. Here's what we expect things to be, but we're on it. Like as soon as stuff gets released, we're doing box breaks, and we're talking about, okay, this is the reaction, and here's what the hobby's saying about this release, and doing a pretty good job of following along and figuring out things as best we can, because we get a lot of questions. Is this a good price to pay? What's this worth? And again, there's no crystal balls, Joe. We don't know for a fact, but it looks pretty rosy, as you guys mentioned earlier, just based on the last few months of prices going up, that wrestling's going to be a good bet.
Yeah.
Especially with Panini. I mean, you could say what you want, but they make beautiful product.
They
So
do.
I think having wrestling is only going to make for some beautiful cards. I mean, I'm excited for it. Obviously, the price point, that's another story. But at least wrestling's in good hands in terms of quality of cards.
Sure. And Topps was getting a bit long in the tooth. I mean, they had the license for a long time. They were cranking out a lot of sets. There were some serious fuck ups with the living set. I mean, they made good on it, but the stuff like that happened. And, we're spending a lot of money for this product. So, I want like you say, I want the stuff to look good. I was pleased with the first release of AEW. I thought it was a decent job. A lot of people was like, oh, you can't get everything. It's like, I don't need to have everything. I just need to have a base, couple of the insert sets, and there's a record of it. And I make a flip through for the website and next,
Yep.
Yeah. You were just talking about the Topps mishaps.
Yeah, on the living set. I don't know if you're aware of that.
That's what it was when I was watching all these. I don't even know if Tony knows it's my YouTube page, but I said I'm going to watch all Tony's videos. So if he had like number 64, I'd watch that, and then I watched number 1, then 63 and 2 to meet them in the middle. And I watched a bunch of them, not all of them. I mean, I don't have that. I'm a busy guy. But that's what you guys were talking about. You were talking about Topps mishaps, and I was like, yeah, these guys sound like baseball guys. Because I got a card this year, certified autograph in a pack, and the autograph wasn't there. That was the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, there's no autograph, and this is why I paid $100 for this box, to get an autograph. Whatever.
Mistakes happen, but there's innocent mistakes, and then there's people that just don't care necessarily, or just are trying to. I saw a documentary on the Boeing that had the first plane went down, and they knew it was a problem. They did nothing about it. Then the second plane went down, and you're shaking your head, going, "Wait a minute, how come after one mistake they can just ignore it and make another mistake?" But that seemed to be happening with Topps, and then
blatant mistakes. Even this year in baseball, Series 1. Mike Yastrzemski, they spelled his name wrong.
Yeah,
how can you spell his name wrong? Not only on the front, on the back. But wait a second, it is a tough name. But his friggin' dad is a Hall of. I mean, his grandpa.
It's Yaz. You can't mess up Yaz's name, dude.
How can you mess up Yastrzemski in
Topps
your top?
Dedicated 1983 Topps sticker book and 1983 Topps set. That Yaz subset, you can't do that. You can't do that.
And that's embarrassing. That is an embarrassment for Topps. I mean, let's just be real.
But we were talking about this.
Forget about their cards, guys. Recall what happened last year. Without any advance notice, blindsided, all of a sudden, they lost all their licenses. A young cat named Michael Rubin, who runs Fanatics, came in and just took it all. Right. Yeah. And they were effectively out of business until Michael Rubin yet again came and just bought them. So, forget about their printing presses. On a corporate level, there was some problems, obviously, that they found themselves in that position. So, hopefully now under the right management, with the right new people, with a sort of fresh approach to things. And again, sometimes they say a change is as good as a rest. So it's nice that we got Upper Deck and Panini now. And let's see. And how it'll be. In 2-3 years, we'll be bitching about them because this is wrong and that's wrong. But in the meantime, it's just nice to know that there's some fresh faces. And so far, Upper Deck has been fantastic. First of all, they're advertising the product on the actual AEW shows, which we've never seen before, which is great. And more importantly, Billy made himself available to all of the different shows that are about wrestling to talk about this stuff. Topps never did that. They never sort of let us through the forbidden door of what's going on behind the scenes. And Upper Deck seems very keen to chat with us about what's going on in the hobby. So we're appreciative of that. And, it's a symbiotic relationship between the manufacturer of the cards, the distributor of the cards, and the collectors of the cards, because we all, if one group is pissed off or things don't work out well, the whole thing falls apart. But Upper Deck and AEW as the licensor seems very committed to making this product work. So that's refreshing to see.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that in regard to people sitting on unopened boxes and stuff, because when I went to my LCS, I bought one pack. I actually pulled I don't even know. I should know these. Darby something auto. bought one
Allen,
pack. And you know, I see like parallels of it selling for big money. But the first thing that, you know, when I went in there, you know, people are always trying to sell you the box, buy the box. It's like, oh, just get a pack. It's like, oh, buy this box. Trust me, you're going to want to sit on this box for a long time because I know it's the first edition. It's the first, I guess, major set done by a major, you know, company for AEW. You know, so, but I'm not, you know, I'm buying it. I want to rip it. I actually just wanted to see what modern wrestling cards were like because I've never bought a pack of modern wrestling cards ever before. So I bought it, pulled that card. They're nice, you know, it's cool, but it's just crazy that people are sitting on wax. But you know, then again, me and Joe, we were just talking today about people who are sitting on boxes of like 85 Topps baseball, like cases.
Yeah, and you guys really like the vintage stuff. I see in your shows how excited you are about the All-Stars and the earlier stuff. And yeah, you wonder, you know, what's in those boxes. But you know, a lot of that stuff has been collected, and a lot of this, you know, it doesn't churn a lot. You know, a lot of these guys will get this stuff and hang on to it for investment value. You know, there's not a lot of poor people in the hobby, if you know what I'm saying. You know, it's gotten to the point where you need a few bucks in your pocket to be one of these sort of master collectors or to be a player collector. Like it's, you know, you're paying hundreds of dollars a card every week, you know, if not more. So it gets expensive. But I hear you, you know, like I don't have a preference, modern versus indie versus Fleer versus TriStar versus, you know, I've collected it all and I enjoy it all. And I go back and look at all of it. And like I said, when you asked me a little while ago, I sort of named a bunch of things from different eras, but everybody has what they enjoy, and that's cool. You know, like collect what you enjoy, collect what you love, and that's it. Like there's no room in any hobby, baseball or any other sports, because it's a hobby. Hobbies are supposed to be the things we do to get away from the troubles in life, right? It's how we spend our time when we're not working or we're not doing family stuff or whatever. So, you know, we've always preached to find your lane and enjoy yourself in it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's the, you know, that's the great message. Unfortunately, there are so many people now that are collecting that are just not thinking that way. And I do dig the wrestling card scene because you guys are much cooler than other.
Thank you.
I mean, there are like little sects of like, you know, based like Bowman Chrome people, and they're like middle-aged guys arguing about like a 17-year-old's autograph, and it gets crazy.
Yeah, and you know what, Joe, we might become that one day. We might get to that if the hobby grows. But by sort of being mindful of it at these early stages, when we are growing and sort of grassroots, the things starting to pick up steam, you know, they're quarrels. You know, we have one guy that sort of rubs another guy the wrong way, and it gets out there. But it doesn't become a thing. It doesn't become a thing that upsets, you know, the hobby, at least not yet. So yeah, that's important. And I agree with you. Like everyone that I've met, not met, but interacted with, like you guys or over Twitter or whatever, have been great. You know, everyone's been appreciative of the sort of work I do on the price guide. And a lot of people say, hey man, thanks for the effort that you do for that. And it's like, yeah, I do it for fun, you know, and I'm glad that you guys enjoy it and whatever. But I find that the people are very cool. Yeah. In our hobby.
I like to ask collectors and historians of the hobby the same question. Is there a card or cards out there that you don't have that you would love to one day get?
Yeah, the Ric Flair WCW autograph, of which we're aware there was one and only one. On these WCW autographs, a bunch of people like Ric Flair and Booker T and British Bulldog, they didn't return their stuff to Topps, but there is a Flair. We have a picture of it. It came up probably about 12, 15 years ago, sold then for about $2,000. That's the holy grail to me. Like people say, oh, if I get a PSA 10 of All-Star, that means nothing to me. A PSA 10 or 9 or 7 or something in a slab. For me is what card that I don't have, just a card, would I want? And it would have to be that one. Past that, then it would probably have to be something from the Rex Roast Beef because I don't have any of it.
Got it. It's cool.
Yeah, that roast beef set, I mean, that's crazy. You know, when we were talking to David Peck,
yeah,
and he was saying like he looks for it every day, and you know, occasionally I look for it. I mean, it's hard enough to find even pictures of it. You got to kind of dig to even find the card.
Like that's the thing. Like if one comes up, as much as I want it, I don't really like my chances of getting it. You know what I mean? It's going to be that kind of thing because I've gone on for too long saying, oh, this is the card that you got to get because no one has it. You know, maybe one day, but.
And you know what's really nice about wrestling cards is that these sets that are low, even lower print runs than like the Peachy and the Tops are sought by collectors. Like, if I can tell you, I can run off a bunch of sets that like Major League Baseball teams did, like the Braves had Burger King, had the Yankee, and all that stuff. No one cares. You could have the card in a Gem Mint 10 of like, whoever. No one cares. It might be $300, but like in wrestling, it's like, oh wow, like they gave out 200 sets to families at this show, and that's it. Those are the cards that are left. So figure how many people were too drunk to take the cards, how many left them in the thing, gave them to the kids, abused them. And you guys are like trying to find the like 19 left on the planet. It's very cool, man. It's so cool that you appreciate that. We were talking about like in 81, Squirt made baseball cards, and like they're not many of these cards compared to even 1981 Tops or 80 Tops, whatever they were doing. There's not that many, and no one cares about it. It's like, even if you get a mint graded one, it might be worth $1,000. Whereas if you have the 81 of a Ricky Henderson in the Gem 10, that might be like a $3,000 card. Exactly. So it's very cool that wrestling card collectors gravitate towards these super rare, because in a lot of other parts of the hobby, there's a ton of rare cards that no one cares about. Super rare, who cares? Pop 5. I don't care about that Jeff Bagwell refractor. It's pop 3. Who cares? But in wrestling, you'd be like, let's get that.
Coming in to be graded. A lot more stuff is going to be slabbed. You're going to have a lot more people looking at these pop reports, and all of a sudden, it's not a competitive thing. It's like a friendly sort of collector versus collector trying to cover different areas of it. And we're at the infancy of this. We're not, for a hobby that's been around for 25 years or whatever it is. Like I say, we're just at the stage now where we've got our legs, and I think we're starting to run now. And some of these things that Tony and myself and other people in the hobby are doing to sort of get out there away from the computer and into the real world to say, hey, we're here, we're real people, we're real collectors, and we want to bring you in. It's going to be fun. Now, ultimately, all that does is just makes our collections worth more. But for me, I've never sold a card, so it's like I'll be long under the ground, and my wife and my buddies or whoever end up with them will get them. But for me, it's like, I can't bring myself to sell a card. I've never done it. If I took one card out of one page, it would be, that set's incomplete. It's like, it's a mindset, a little crazy, but
no, it's not. It's actually not.
It's not crazy at all.
Yeah, it's not. I totally get it.
Yeah, like
I have some cards that I know that I personally collected as a kid. Even if I get one that's, a PSA 9 of Tony Gwynn's rookie, PSA 10, I have a Tony Gwynn rookie that I can't get rid of. It's just part of me. I got that out of a pack as a kid, and I can't get rid of it. So it's like, that's the collector side in you that you don't care about.
I know we're going on, but I'll tell you guys a story before we wrapped up. When I was a kid, obviously up in Canada, it's hockey. So I had, when I was in grade 8, the rookie set of Gretzky in my Adidas gym bag. I must have had 10 of those Gretzky rookie cards. We'd be winging it off to school, playing. When I sold my first business, when I started my first business and I need cash, I took all my hockey cards, including God knows how many of these rookie Gretzkys. There had to be at least 4 or 5 of them. And this guy raped me because I had no idea about their future value. I think I got $2,500 or something for the entire collection. But you know what I did, guys? I kept those Topps wrestling cards. Got rid of all the hockey, but why? Because I liked them. I liked wrestling. I was a wrestling fan. That was my thing. So it's about the having of something that you like. So yeah, you're right. It's not crazy because life is short. It's over in a blink. So enjoy yourself. Like, collect the things you like, interact with the guys you want to interact with, and have fun. That's what the wrestling hobby has been for me.
You summed it up.
I think we'll leave it on that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming through. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. And again, really appreciate you guys making the jump into the wrestling side of things. And like I say, I saw your interviews with the other guys, and I appreciate you inviting me on as well. And I'm thinking, yeah, these guys are here to help. And that's what we're getting. We're getting a lot of love from other people in the hobby. And like I say, Tony's Top Rope Wrestling Con. We'll be hyping that. You'll be hearing more of that. I might get involved at a larger level with that next year. We're working towards some bigger things within the card hobby. And this is all stuff that's going to be positive for everybody.
It's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Awesome, brother.
All right, guys. Thanks very much. Have a good night.
Awesome, man. Be well. Thank you.
All right.